Thank you very much. Welcome everyone, members, officers and members of the public to this meeting of the Council. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer. I will invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to update you on the systems being used and confirm that officers in remote attendance are present. Amy, to you.
If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted to your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can start speaking. The normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. Voting. When requested to vote, voting is via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members vote will be shown on screens around the room and results will be visible on the YouTube live stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start? No, I'll hand back to the chair then.
Right, apologies for absence. I have received apologies for absence from councillors Caroline McDonnell, Sarah Lucas, Kathy Brown-John, Rona Cameron, Claire Billing and Tom Tyson. Are there any further apologies? I hear no voices, so we'll move on. Item 2, the minutes of the 2nd of October and the 13th of November, which you have in front of you. I would like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of both of these meetings of full council on the 2nd of October and the 13th of November. Can I have a seconder, please? Have you? Daniel Allen. Thank you, Daniel. Any comments on the minutes? And if we can just go to the business of the vote, and if you could just vote on accepting the minutes.
That motion's carried.
Okay, thank you very much. There are the usual chair's announcements. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is recorded. The recordings will be available on both the council's YouTube page as well as the council's ModGov site alongside the documentation from the meeting. I've missed one out. Notification of other business. There hasn't been any anyway, so I'll carry on with chair's announcements. Climate emergency and ecological emergency. Members are reminded that this council has declared both a climate emergency and an ecological emergency. These are serious decisions and mean that, as these are emergencies, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Rules of debate. Please can I remind you that the normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. No speeches may be made after the mover has moved a motion and explained the purpose of it until the motion has been seconded. When seconding a motion or amendment, a member may reserve their speech until later in the debate. In accordance with the Constitution, please can members ensure that no speech exceeds 3 minutes without the consent of the chair. Comfort break. For the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. I will announce a comfort break at an appropriate time should proceedings continue at length. Public participation, we have none, so we're on to item 6, which is items referred from other committees. Oh, I'm so sorry. Martin.
I should declare an interest on a licensing item as the owner and operator of licensed premises within the district. It almost, sorry, you disappeared then, almost certainly a pecuniary interest, so I suspect I should have to leave the room. Is that what you would want me to do? Thank you very much.
I'm advised that is. Thank you very much, Martin. Sorry, I missed you on the earlier. Okay, so we are items referred from other committees. 6B, the referral from Cabinet medium-term financial strategy we take with item 7, and the referral from licensing, adoption of a statement of licensing policy required by virtue of Section 5 of the Licensing Act 2003. Councillor David Stanley, as Chair of Licensing and Regulation Committee, to present the referral. Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the referral from the Licensing and Regulation Committee. It met in October regarding the adoption of a new licensing policy. This policy needs to be adopted by January and will last for a maximum period of 5 years. The existing policy is effective, so there was no need for significant change. Some data was updated and wordings clarified. There were links made to the Council's vision for licensing, to economic vitality and to community wellbeing. Some other updates were references to drink spiking and the Women and Girls Safety Charter. I'd like to extend the committee's thanks to all involved in the licensing team and beyond who had a hand in updating the policy. The report received unanimous support from the Licensing and Regulation Committee at that meeting in October. I therefore submit the referral. Thank you, Chair.
I wasn't. Thank you, Mel, keeping an eye on me. Okay, the recommendation that the statement of licensing policy as amended be adopted. Proposing. Yeah, so Councillor David Stanley proposes. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Allen, Daniel Allen, to second. Is there any debate at all on this? I see none, so let's go to the vote, please.
That motion's carried.
Yeah, can somebody get, oh, James going to get Martin back in, right. Hardly worth him leaving, I know. Welcome back, Martin. Item 7, the medium-term financial strategy. I'm going to invite Councillor Ian Albert as Executive Member for Resources to present the referral and report on this item. And as it's Ian, we've extended his time to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Keith, and thanks for that early Christmas present. In introducing the medium-term financial strategy, I'd like to thank Ian Cooper and his team for their work, and of course for the really constructive discussion that took place at the Finance Committee. And I think it's always important at these times, about this evening and of all, there really was much more that colleagues cross-party agreed on than divided us at those meetings. We delayed doing the MTFS in the hope that there would be more clarity on future funding. We knew already that government had stated there would be a 3-year settlement for local government for the first time for many years. That is welcome and allows all local authorities a space to plan. Government published their funding policy statement on the 20th of November. This has given us enough information for LG Futures. It's one of our experts in local government funding that we use to refresh their forecasts. There appears to be fewer unknowns, so these estimates should be more certain. But as we know, any modelling of this kind does come with health warnings, and we very much discussed that, as colleagues will remember, in the LGR context a few weeks back. So we must be cautious, and we won't have absolute clarity until the provisional local government settlement in a couple of weeks' time. Mr. Cooper's Christmas present. These latest estimates put our government funding at around the middle of the range that was discussed by Cabinet and Finance Committee. After incorporating business rate gains, which we have prudently never put in our base budget, and with council tax included, then the 28-29 position would show a small increase in real terms. And we recognise that we will need to take account of any new burdens for weekly food waste collection. It is, though, based on council tax base increases, should account for population increases too. So on a positive message, I highlighted at Cabinet, we now have had our pension triennial valuation results. And due to the positive performance of the fund, this will reduce our employer contribution by around £1.3 million per year, a significant sum. We've also been notified of our extended producer responsibility, estimated funding for next year, and that is higher than current forecasts. So it is looking more likely that we can achieve a medium-term balanced revenue budget with no or only minimal savings. However, we must and we will keep that under review, especially when we get the settlement in a couple of weeks' time. We should also be able to retain a strong general fund balance, well above the worst case scenario that was discussed at Finance. But of course, this administration will always look for ways we can improve our services, deliver savings and efficiencies, and for opportunities where we can add value and generate more income where appropriate. The strategy is set out at Appendix A and follows the same format as previous strategies. Specific references to Fair Funding 2, the expected new formula, and the current uncertainty are in there. Although, as I've just referenced, we hope that uncertainty seems to be reducing. The spread of £2.6 million on Table 1 of Appendix A were not worst case and best case scenarios, but two possible scenarios that could happen depending on government decisions. And as I said just now, we seem to have fallen somewhere in the middle. But given the uncertainty at the time of writing the strategy, it sets out that there should be a commitment to react appropriately to the final funding position until we know for certain that should still be the case. And that's important, obviously, to emphasise that point. If required, we're not looking to make significant savings in 26-27, and we don't need to have delivered all of our savings until 28-29. But we do need, if that's the case, to have a deliverable plan to have a balanced medium-term budget. We'll say more about this in the next iterations of the budget setting papers, Finance Cabinet, and obviously as they come to full council. Finally, Chair, mentioned some of the work that officers have been doing with Marie Curie on financial support for those with terminal illnesses. Something I thought was really important when we obviously heard about this back in September, the work that Manchester City Council was taking forward, and our colleagues, obviously Sean Prendergast, I know, also raised this with me. This is much broader than just council tax, but eligibility for council tax support does form part of it. I think we should be very sympathetic to the issue that Marie Curie raised. We already have a CTRS scheme that ensures that all those on the lowest incomes don't have to pay council tax. Whilst I don't think we can go as far as providing zero council tax to all those with a terminal illness, I'm looking at how we could add this to our discretionary scheme to make sure that no one slips through the net and we do our bit to support them. And I think hopefully colleagues and the council will welcome that, and we know that obviously scrutiny colleagues have asked for a report on the CTRS, and there'll be more detail in there and the meeting in the new year. And that will also come back to council at the end of January as part of our annual review of the CTRS. We're in direct communication with Marie Curie to get further understanding from this, and obviously asking them to look at our policies to see whether they have any views or where we can make any further improvements. So, Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation that the strategy is adopted, and obviously happy to answer any questions, and obviously we have Mr. Cooper here to answer the more difficult questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian, very much. So that's Ian has duly moved that proposal. Can I have a seconder, please? Daniel Allen. Thank you, Dan. Right. Any debate on that? Any points to be made? Any questions to be asked? Paul Ward.
Thank you, Chair. We've clearly got a high degree of uncertainty in the financial outlook for North Herts pending the decisions from central government on the fair funding review we just heard about. Following my request at FAR, the final report contains analysis of the potential impact on our general fund reserve balance. My thanks go to the Director of Resources, the Executive Member and the Cabinet for including that in the final report, which councillors can see on page 51. What this shows is that even in the positive case and with the current proposed spending levels and no additional savings, we would need to be using up around 21% of our general reserves. And in the negative case, that rises to about 62% of our general reserves. But having said that, our Director of Resources has made it clear that this would still be above our minimum reserves levels required. And also, as Councillor Albert just said, these are not necessarily best and worst cases. So while there are no alarm bells ringing yet, I do believe it places more onus on the Cabinet and the Council in the new year to refocus on what savings are needed, having listened to the priorities of our residents this year, and make some difficult decisions only if needed prior to a transition to a unitary authority. And I'd echo what Councillor Alban just said around reacting appropriately. I think was the phrase. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, so it's not really a question there to answer, I don't think. But any others? No, then we'll go to the vote, I think. All those in favour, please show.
That motion's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. We move on to item 8, which is questions from members. There have been 3 questions submitted by members in accordance with Standing Order 4.8.11. These are included in the supplementary document pack. The first question is on council street naming policy for new developments. Can I invite Councillor Joe Graziano to put the question to Donna Wright, our exec member? Over to you, Joe.
I'm just finding the question. Sorry, Chair. I had it a minute ago and it's gone missing. Apologies, Chair.
Forgotten what you asked.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I'm now ready to ask the question. Could I ask the Executive Member for Places, Councillor Donna Wright, to outline the street naming policy of the council for new developments within the district, please?
Okay, so the council's approach to street naming and numbering is set out on the council website, and our officers have followed the same process for many years. The applicant is asked to complete an online application and suggest potential road names. These suggestions are reviewed to make sure they are appropriate using published criteria. This includes making sure the suggested name will not cause confusion with existing road names in the area. Local councillors and the relevant town or parish councils are consulted. Where there is agreement or no objection, officers confirm the name. Relevant bodies such as Royal Mail, utilities companies and the county council are advised. Where agreement cannot be reached within the consideration period, the matter can be referred to the relevant committee forum.
Thank you. Have you got a supplementary?
I do. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that response. Where several residents who live in an area have a right to complain or object about a road naming because it is not in the community interest, or they have not been listened to, what is the process, if any? And is it time we have an updated policy with the allowance of discretion, not based on an outdated statute dating back to 1847? Thank you.
The council has no particular powers or process to rescind or change the name of a street once it's been agreed. The developer can be advised to pursue the matter further if they wish, and if they voluntarily approach the council to review the name to which they previously agreed, then a new consultation could take place.
Okay, thanks for that. The second question is on expansion of the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty. Again, this is for Donna. So, Councillor Ralph Munster. Ralph?
Thank you, Chair. To ask the Executive Member for Place what assessment has been made as to the benefits of expanding the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty across areas of North Hertfordshire.
Thank you. So just for clarification, areas of outstanding natural beauty are now referred to as national landscapes in national policy and legislation. I guess outstanding and beauty are subjective terms. Natural England were leading a project to consider changes to the boundaries of the Chilterns National Landscape, but they announced this review had been cancelled in May 2025. This was reported to all councillors through the Members' Information Service in May and to Cabinet in June. In terms of the assessment on the benefits of expanding the boundaries, when the project was cancelled, Natural England advised that they were hoping to share the evidence base which had been collated in due course to inform other projects. We are waiting for this information to be shared to see if or how that evidence might support appropriate council policies or designations in our local plan review.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you, Chairman. And can I take the opportunity to thank Councillor Wright for her response? But as she well knows, the planning reforms introduced by the government has made speculative development in North Hertfordshire more likely, as seen by recent applications in Codicot, St Hippolytes and Ickleford. And the expansion of the area of outstanding natural beauty to areas in North Hertfordshire would have given those areas within North Hertfordshire greater and much needed protections against inappropriate development. And therefore, will she take the opportunity tonight to condemn the decision of the government to withdraw this funding and pause this crucial project? And will she commit to writing to the Secretary of State for the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs to encourage the government to unlock this funding and ensure that this project can go ahead as planned under the previous Conservative government?
Okay, so we share the disappointment that this project was cancelled, but let's be clear, Natural England was left with impossible choices because of the funding shortfall inherited from the last government. It's a real shame that under their watch, this proposal didn't progress far enough to secure priority for completion. The good news is that our local MP, Alistair Stratton, is actively engaging with Natural England to push for environmental investment in our area. And as a council, we are not standing still. We are looking at how the data gathered can inform our next local plan with public consultation starting next year.
Thank you. And question C, which we now have 3 bells on the fruit machine for Donna Wright, which is the impact on local watercourses from London Luton Airport. Ralph Munster to ask.
Thank you, Chairman. To ask the Executive Member for the Environment what assessment has been made as to the impact of London Luton Airport on local watercourses in North Hertfordshire, including our rare and internationally important chalk streams.
So the development consent order for Luton Airport's expansion was granted by the Secretary of State in April 2025, following an extensive examination which explored many issues, including the potential impact on the chalk aquifer and chalk streams. A study on the possible effects on the water environment was completed, and all evidence, recommendations and the Secretary of State's decision are available to review on the Planning Inspectorate's website.
Thank you, Chairman. As the seemingly the Executive Member isn't aware of this, but an unpublished Environment Agency report has highlighted alarmingly high levels of toxic chemicals detected in and around watercourses near major airports, with the highest PFAS levels being recorded at London Luton Airport. In light of this, what steps have been taken by the Council to hold the airport accountable and ensure that our local watercourses are unpolluted and clean?
Well, look, our council plan recognises the importance of the district's chalk streams. This includes the rivers Hiss and Mimram, which are closest to the area affected by the development consent order for the airport expansion. Our sustainability priority says we will support efforts to protect our chalk streams. The DCO is currently subject to judicial review, and we are awaiting the outcomes of these legal proceedings. The impact on the chalk streams has been rigorously assessed, and as a council, we will remain committed to safeguarding these vital habitats, and we will act based on the legal outcome.
Okay, thank you very much. And that moves us on to item 9 on the agenda, which is notice of motions. We have received 2 motions to consider. Due notice has been given in accordance with Standing Order 4.8.12. Members, before we begin this item, I want to draw your attention to Standing Orders 4.8.12D and 4.8.12E, which normally apply to motions on notice. Given the significance of these motions, and in order to allow the fullest possible debate, I am happy to propose a motion under Standing Order 4.8.13M to suspend those 2 standing orders for Agenda Item 9, Notice of Motions. Suspending will remove the 30-minute time limit on debate, and suspending 4.8.12E will remove the requirement to rotate contributions between political groups, although I would fully intend to deal with that on this one. It's entirely up to you. Do you want it or not? So I will move that Standing Orders 4.8.12D and 4.8.12E be suspended for the duration of Agenda Item 9, Notice of Motions. And if there's a seconder, yeah, I've got a proposer and a seconder, and then we will abide by the democratic will of the council chamber. So any debate on that? Then we go to the vote.
That motion's carried, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So suspended. I should have said, for the clarity, all other rules of debate will continue to apply. So before we get into this, I think I would want to remind members of our obligations under the Code of Conduct. I'm not about to lecture you all, because many of you have been here a lot longer than I have, but I think it's also for the benefit of the public and the people who are watching. This is a political debate and feelings may run high, but comments must remain respectful, directed through the chair and focused on the motion itself. Personal attacks or imputing improper motives are not permitted, and I will intervene if contributions cross that line. Don't make me use that gavel. We now, so it is about principle, it's not personality. You have got 3 minutes each, so I would use the usual just a minute rules. Please, no hesitation, deviation or repetition. I know some of you have got strong points to make, and others who may be amongst you need to make sure social media sound bites are on the record. No rerun of previous debates, please. And please remember, it is the season of goodwill. So I'm going to invite, actually, there was one other quote I was given. It's not often I can quote Disraeli in the council chamber, but he once said of his opponent that he was inebriated by the exuberance of his own verbosity. So if we can avoid that. I'll invite Councillor Ruth Brown to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight, the Liberal Democrat Group are bringing a motion of no confidence in the leader because he and his cabinet ignored the will of full council. Full council voted by a clear majority for the 2 unitary model of local government reorganisation for Hertfordshire. Yet Cabinet voted for the 4 unitary option, which the leader has publicly supported. In doing so, the leader and his cabinet voted for the breakup of North Hertfordshire and a central unitary council starting with a £22 million deficit. Not only that, but during the cabinet meeting, the leader made public a private conversation with me, claiming that I had threatened him. He has repeatedly invited us to talk to him, and yet he misused what I offered as a courtesy. A leader who breaks a confidence cannot be trusted with the leadership of a council. At cabinet, he ignored the locally elected representatives by failing to address the issues raised during the full council debate and voting for his own publicly stated preference for the 4 unitary option. The leader, claiming to be listening to residents, yet the consultation he referred to had a tiny response rate, less than 1%, and the result was not at all conclusive. Indeed, more people expressed no preference than for any of the options, and the report itself stated that there was no clear consensus. The local community forums at which the leader presented the unitary options did not provide an opportunity for residents to express a preference. Indeed, the only forum where the issue attracted significant public interest was in Letchworth. In Royston, many of the public left before the item was discussed. Yeah, that's not true. At cabinet, the leader voted to place a border through North Herts, cutting off Royston and separating many villages, such as Ashwell and Sandon, from their local services, whilst ignoring the will of local members who represent these communities. The Liberal Democrat group acknowledges that cabinet had a legal right to make a decision contrary to the will of full council, but we have no confidence in a leader who fails to listen to locally elected representatives. I propose that the leader of the council is removed.
Do I have a seconder for the motion?
I'll reserve my right to speak.
Okay. And before I move on, can I confirm that there are 3 further signatories to the motion? I've got Councillor Matt Barnes and Councillor Paul Ward, and I've got Councillor Dominic Griffiths for Tom Tyson. Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. A reminder to members that you must indicate if you wish to speak, and I will call speakers one at a time. All remarks must be directed through the chair and should be kept relevant to the motion. So on that basis, you can ask for some clarification. If I can give it, I surely will.
Point of clarification about not acknowledging the will of council. A side letter was sent to acknowledge what council said, and that went through. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Okay. Councillor Val Bryant.
Point of clarification, please, Chair. Can I ask Councillor Brown through you which Letchworth committee it was, what the date was? Which Letchworth Community Forum it was that she was referring to, so I can look up the minutes.
I was referring to the Letchworth Community Forum, at which my colleague Council Chalmers told me that there was significant interest in the LGR options that were presented, and the options were presented at all the forums, as I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. So I'm looking for anybody who wishes to speak. Councillor Dominic Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. We are not here, I want to make this very clear, to re-debate the decisions on the unitary matter of the previous council meeting. We are here to talk about how councillors in this chamber have lost trust in the Labour leader of this administration. The issue that we have in front of us is one of trust. Trust that is hard to gain and easy to lose. The council leader has lost the trust of us, the councillors. In black and white terms, we, the councillors, were asked for our opinion on an important decision that we were told many times was the future of our county. We were told many times that the vote at that extraordinary meeting, a meeting that was called because the Labour leader apparently wanted to hear our views, that this would be indicative, that we would be listened to, would be taken into account. No such actions as I can see have taken place. We were ignored. We were put to one side in favour of what we now know is a predetermined decision. Why were we ignored? Why ask for our opinion when it is clear from the outset that the Labour leader and the Cabinet were not going to listen to us? I've been told many times that the Cabinet were legally told that they cannot be predetermined in their decision on the unitary matter. I assume, therefore, that it is sheer coincidence that every Labour member of both the Cabinet, Chamber, and all of Hertfordshire voted in favour of 4 unitaries. It must therefore also be sheer coincidence that the Cabinet came with prepared speeches and notes to discuss to a meeting that they were told cannot have a predetermined view. Sheer coincidence that the Labour leader of the council gave interviews explaining his preference as well. The report that Councillor Allen recommended and voted for, at full council contained the following line: there was no standout preference for any one unitary model. Yet, Councillor Allen has repeatedly argued that the public had delivered an overwhelming mandate in favour of his preferred option. That is a dishonest manipulation of the findings, not leadership. I've lost the belief that the Labour leader would listen to our views and our decisions in the future. If he can disregard the will of the Chamber on unitary decisions,
Half a minute, Tom.
why should I believe that he will listen again in the future? There is no proof that I can see that Councillor Allen would do so. It is for these reasons that I have no confidence in the leader. Thank you.
Chairman, there is a well-known saying, to govern is to choose. But what exactly does it mean? Well, it means that those in power, those in authority, those in administration are required to take difficult decisions on behalf of the people they serve. However, the choice facing the Labour Cabinet on the question of local government reorganisation wasn't a difficult one to answer, because Council clearly and explicitly expressed its view on the 13th of November when it voted by a majority to reject 4 unitary authorities for Hertfordshire. But instead of upholding the democratic will of Council, Cabinet chose not only to put party before community, not only to force our residents to pay more and get less, but to consciously, deliberately and willfully subvert and undermine our local democracy. There is no greater charge that can be laid against an administration, and that is why we are here tonight, to hold the administration, through the leader of the council, accountable for such a reprehensible action. The arguments I have seen on social media, and I'm sure we will hear tonight from Labour colleagues who seek to defend this blatant disregard for democracy, are tenuous and disingenuous. They represent a fundamental misunderstanding as to why we have all been elected to sit in this chamber tonight. Unlike Switzerland, who have a referendum on almost every single month to take decisions on matters of national importance, the United Kingdom is not a direct democracy. The core principle on which this country is built is that of representative democracy. The people of North Hertfordshire, the people of the communities that we collectively represent here tonight, have given us the honour to serve. They have trusted us to use our principles and our judgment to guide us as we seek to do right by them through the decisions we take in this place. Whilst members of the Labour Cabinet may seek to shy away from their responsibilities and their duty, that is something which is unconscionable to myself and my Conservative colleagues. It is our duty this evening to hold this minority administration to account for acting without a mandate and to stand in support of democracy, for we will stand on principle or we will not stand at all.
Stirring stuff. Thank you. Donna Wright.
Well, I was very pleased to read in the local press that the North Herts Liberal Democrats have ruled out any pact with the Conservatives. We all know how disastrous the last Lib Dem Tory coalition was. Local government is still struggling to recover from the austerity measures they imposed. And before anyone says that was years ago, let's remember the Labour Party still gets jibes about the winter of discontent. I'm deeply disappointed by this motion. I cannot see what the opposition hopes to achieve other than to destabilise and disrupt the work of the council. Local government reorganisation will be decided by central government against their published criteria. Cabinet members here have no influence over that decision. None. If you think otherwise, you are mistaken. Whether Cabinet followed public opinion, the council vote, or our own judgment, it may well make no difference. It is not our decision. For all we know, the two unitary model may win, and this entire exercise tonight will have been a waste of time. But perhaps there are other motivations behind this motion relating to Councillor Allen as a leader. If so, let me ask, what do you want in a leader? Councillor Allen has integrity and is hardworking, open and honest. He has delivered results and built strong relationships with officers. His record speaks for itself. Personally, I find his honesty refreshing. You know exactly where you stand with him. In a world where too many local politicians of all parties chase their own careers, Councillor Allen stands out as someone genuinely committed to serving the community. That's what I value in a leader, and I think the public does too.
Thank you. Daniel Wright-Mason. Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to mince my words, colleagues, because I do believe that this motion is a misguided response from a core of opposition councillors who are upset and in many cases embarrassed by their failure to get what they wanted on local government reorganisation. And it's not hard to see why. During the debate, colleagues on the other side of the chamber relied on some strong rhetoric against the four unitary model. Well, it would appear that the majority of Hertfordshire didn't agree with their assessment. 6 out of 11 councils in Hertfordshire voted for the four unitary option, and it was the most popular choice for residents both in North Herts and Hertfordshire as a whole. Now, political posturing after a decision doesn't go your way is one thing. We've all been guilty of it. But I think what has been genuinely poor has been the way that in setting the scene for this motion, people here tonight, in the previous meeting and on social media, have repeatedly mocked and devalued the democratic participation of residents in the consultation on LGR. The implication being that the very idea that this cabinet made a decision based on the most popular response from residents is so out of line that it warrants the complete removal of the council leader. Meanwhile, they themselves may only be here in this chamber because less than 1 in 5 eligible electors in their ward put a cross next to their name. There are people in this chamber who've both won and lost on the drawing of straws by 4 and 8 votes, yet I've never heard members question their democratic legitimacy. So perhaps if true democratic purity is such a strongly held belief for some here, they should start by re-evaluating their own position. Because without wishing to shatter anyone's delusions of grandeur, I'm afraid to say that you are a beneficiary of low turnout democratic engagement. So by only questioning the legitimacy of similar engagement when it doesn't benefit you, I fear that you risk not only a perception of hypocrisy, but also a certain lack of irony. Now, I'd like to finish tonight by saying that I am also glad to see the Liberal Democrats' colleagues have informed the press that they aren't looking to use this motion to pursue a deal with the Conservatives. But after weeks of rumours of backroom deals and after a debate on the fundamentals of local government, where your speeches were so similar that you could read them side by side and not know which party said them, you can understand why many residents, including, I'm sure, many Liberal Democrat voters, were starting to be concerned. So I would urge colleagues in this room, many of whom I really respect, do not allow embarrassment to make you forget the realities of why and how you are here. Because I fear if this motion passes, residents will not see an effective opposition, but instead a purely vindictive one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Matt Barnes. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. This motion is about leadership. So yes, I think Councillor Allen and his colleagues are wrong on this issue and that they were wrong to go against the council vote. But we need to talk about Councillor Allen's leadership through this process. Leadership is about choices. Councillor Allen has played a key role in designing the 4 unitary scheme. Now, there's nothing wrong in principle with exploring the idea of smaller councils. Yet in pursuing this idea, at some point Councillor Allen accepted the partitioning of the council which he leads, apparently to make the numbers work. But there are two key problems with this. The first problem is the impact on rural communities around Baldock, those most affected by the proposed border. Now, it is welcome that he's finally attempted to rectify this, at least in part with the side letter. But it is concerning that he allowed this arrangement to be put forward in the first place when the problem was so obvious to so many of us. The second problem is that the numbers don't work. Even in an optimistic scenario, it seems very likely that the central unitary will face some financial difficulty. This will mean more difficult choices and worse outcomes for residents. It is important to be clear with the public about this, and yet Councillor Allen has continued to promote this scheme. Let's also be clear about the consultation results. Yes, there was a slight preference for 4 unitaries among those who expressed an opinion, but the report, which he asked us to approve, was clear. There is no clear consensus on a preferred structure. As Councillor Brown said, more respondees expressed no preference at all, rather than support any of the options, perhaps reflecting the lack of information presented to them at the time. Councillor Allen has repeatedly argued that the public has delivered a clear mandate in favour of his preferred option, but they haven't. That isn't leadership, it's gaslighting. At the last council meeting, Councillor Allen chose to use his position not to ask a question of the public speaker, but to try to tell us that they were wrong, only to then produce an amendment at Cabinet which accepted that they were right. At the same Cabinet meeting, he stressed the importance of keeping an open mind, except he'd already told the media precisely what he was going to do. He then read out a prepared statement in support of his preferred option. Can you see the problem here? And then there is the clear breach of trust which Councillor Brown has outlined, choosing to disclose a private conversation in public to name and shame whilst trying to claim the moral high ground. All Ruth did was tell the truth, as she always does. A vote of no confidence is a fact of political life. It exists so that the elected chamber can remove a leader whose choices it can no longer stomach. And I'm afraid that is where we find ourselves tonight. There has been a clear failure of leadership over this issue. Enough is enough. Our residents deserve better. Thank you.
Okay. Daniel Allen.
Bit of clarification.
Sure.
Wasn't a conversation. That's a two-way thing. It was a threat.
Okay. Well, we'll take that as an opinion. Laura Williams.
If this is about LGR, let's set the record straight. As the exec member for LGR, I want to be really clear. The public consultation was about far more than the online survey. Dan and I spoke at every area forum in September without ever expressing a preference. Each of you were in attendance on one of those occasions. We spoke at many other public meetings. Following the feedback about Baldock at the full council meeting, we amended the recommendation. We listened and we acted. While some of you may not like the opinions that the residents expressed, we could not and we did not ignore them. We were elected and appointed to make this recommendation. We took our duty very seriously and we made that difficult decision. Interestingly, throughout the consultation period, we also repeatedly heard that tonight's motion was already being planned. Conservative and Lib Dem councillors working together to create this opportunity to take control of North Hearts. So let's be honest, this goes far beyond LGR. At the 2025 county elections, we stopped populism at the borders of North Hearts. We were all there. We were all proud of that. I have heard many of you enthusiastically state that we achieve great things when we collaborate, when we set aside party politics and work together for our communities. I heard it again just 2 weeks ago in this chamber at our Youth Democracy Day. So here's the real question. Will we do that now? Will we recommit to working together for a legacy that makes it hard for populism to rise here? 2027 may well bring populist councillors into the new unitary chamber. Political game playing here tonight feeds into their narrative. So the choice is stark. work together for our people, or play games while populism grows around us? I just wonder what the price of this game is. I know that most of you came here to make things better, so let's prove it.
Thank you. Tamsin Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight I want to speak as a Cabinet member and about the message we are sending as a council. Votes of no confidence are not theatre. They have a real and destabilising impact on the work of this authority. We are galloping through the LGR timeline, and there will come a point where we can no longer make substantive decisions. Dan Allen has been absolutely clear throughout that process. Pace is critical, and anything we want to protect in terms of the projects of this authority through that transition must move swiftly. Our window to hand those projects over to the new authority in a way that genuinely serves the towns and villages of North Hertfordshire is closing fast. Today's vote could have a very real impact on the approval of our February budget, and none of us have the numbers to guarantee otherwise. Even if we do resolve this leadership question, we simply do not have time for this. I asked my officers for their thoughts on what they perceive could be most at risk if this caused delays to budget approvals. And here are just a few of the headline items. Our shared prosperity fund allocations, which are the largest grants we issue to dozens of community organisations, depend on it. The implementation of the economic development strategy, which will help safeguard the growth of our businesses as we transition into a much larger authority, regardless of whether it is 2, 3 or 4. Major capital projects like Churchgate and Berrymead could be badly impacted, worst case terminally, and smaller but still important schemes such as Charnwood and Riverside Walk. This is particularly galling given Dan's track record of delivery, often projects with decades-long histories of non-resolution by previous administrations. In my portfolio, Churchgate and Berrymead stand out, but so too does the Arena football ground in Baldock, the return of the orchard in my ward to the Green Spaces team, all projects which had over 10 years of needing an answer and previous leaders had failed to provide them. Dan has provided clear leadership where others have often failed, and his strength of leadership was actually recognised in the peer review process. And then there is the message that this sends to the public. I really don't think they're going to focus on the technocratic details of the LGR process. Is it 2, 3 or 4? They will see a leader with a decades-long history of community service being torn down, a volunteer policeman who has worked with vulnerable children, helped found Feed Up, Warm Up, the Library of Things, who will be found monthly at the food bank at Wilbury Cafe. He will be there on Christmas Eve. He supported the founding of North Herts Pride, the Royal British Legion. He's recognisable at schools all across our district as the volunteer Father Christmas with a DJ deck. And he's the man who hosted hundreds of people at his multiple chair events in this district and attended over 150 more as one of the hardest working chairs this authority has had. What message does this send to our communities? How does it square with such a strong record of delivery for North Herts? And how can those of us who try to convince people to run for office, who don't necessarily see themselves in politics, actually stand up? Then this is what you choose to do to good people who serve their communities. Dan, it has been an absolute honour to serve in your cabinet. I hope to continue to do so. And I just want to say on record a huge thank you for your service.
Thank you. Stephen Patmore.
Thank you, Chair. What we've witnessed from this Labour minority administration is nothing short of abandonment of responsibility and a clear disregard for democratic decision-making process. Last month, this council, the full council, carefully considered the future of local government in Hertfordshire. After reviewing the evidence, the financial implication, and most importantly, the long-term interests of our residents, councillors voted decisively for a 2-division unitary authority. This was the sensible, pragmatic and responsible choice. The option that protects services, safeguards finances and keeps communities together. This option was supported by the majority of the democratically elected members in this chamber. Yet, despite that clear mandate, the Labour minority leadership chose to ignore the council's decision and put forward the 4-division model. A model that slices up Hertfordshire, weakens our district, increases fragmentation and jeopardises financial efficiency. Colleagues, let's call this what it is, a political-driven decision, not a sensible one. A decision made by a minority administration acting without a mandate. a decision that places party instruction above the people of North Hertfordshire. This is precisely why we find ourselves at a point where a vote of no confidence is not only justified, it is necessary. A council cannot function when its leadership refuses to implement the democratic decision of the very body it's meant to lead. A council cannot thrive when a minority administration ignores the majority verdict. A council cannot serve its residents when political ideology takes priority over sound governance and common sense. The Conservative Group stands firmly for accountability, for financial responsibility, and respecting the democratic will of this chamber. Unlike the Labour administration, we believe decisions about North Hertfordshire's future should be based on what works, not what fits the National Party narrative. Colleagues, the Labour minority leadership has lost the confidence of this council because they refuse to listen to it.
David.
Chair, tonight this council must decide whether we can retain confidence and trust in its leader, who has ignored a democratic decision, misrepresented the evidence, and ultimately put his interests and those of his party above those of local residents, and put North Hertfordshire at risk of poorer services and higher costs. This council at its last meeting voted clearly for the two-unitary model because it offers strategic capacity, financial stability, and better outcomes for residents. But those arguments were well made at the last council meeting. Yet the Labour leader argued publicly before that vote and since claims the consultation shows overwhelming support for four unitaries. And this is simply not what the agreed evidence says. Others have quoted from that. There was no mandate, no consensus, and certainly no grounds for overturning this council's clear decision. And the reality behind that plurality, only 0.1% of residents responded to the consultation. And the supposed preference of four councils was a margin of just 7 people, 7 residents out of more than 333,000. To present that as a democratic will of North Hertfordshire is a misuse of the term. Residents were asked to choose without meaningful data, without financial modelling, and without clarity on the real impact of each option. Using that limited exercise to undermine the council's decision is not democracy, it is a travesty of democracy. And the consequences matter. 300 million matter. Residents want issues that they deal with issues that they truly need: housing, social care, help with bills, and shorter NHS waits. At a time when families are struggling, picking the most expensive and least efficient model is indefensible. Chair, leadership requires honesty with evidence and respect for democratic decisions. We no longer believe the leader puts the interests of North Herts residents first, that the political prospects of a future Labour-run council matter more to him, and when a Labour leader misrepresents the evidence, ignores a lawful council decision, and calls a 7-person margin from 0.1% of residents democracy, confidence is no longer tenable. North Hertfordshire deserves honesty, accountability, and leadership that puts residents first, not political convenience. That is why we must withdraw our confidence tonight.
Sadie Billing.
I'm not going to sit here and talk about political parties or the reason behind this motion. That isn't why I got involved in local government, and it's not how I want to work. What I want to talk about are the practical implications of what happens if this motion passes, because those are real and they affect our residents and the day-to-day running of this council. First of all, the cost and disruption. If this council votes to remove Daniel Allen as leader tonight, then this will inevitably require a further meeting to allow proper discussion and consideration of next steps. And that means extra time, extra work, and extra money. It's cost created entirely by process, nothing that improves a single service for a single resident. Then there's the logistics. This motion has already taken up a huge amount of officer time. Officers who have had to look at every possible outcome, give advice, prepare paperwork, and be ready to whatever we decide. That's not a small task. And every hour spent on this is an hour taken away from major pieces of work that genuinely matter. And I want to say this clearly. Our officers are here to support the council and help us deliver the best service we can. They work incredibly hard. And they do it because they care about this place and our communities. But they are not here to stay late, to be pulled into crisis mode, or to divert attention away from important work just so we can deal with internal politics. They deserve better than that, and frankly, so do our residents. I don't enjoy this kind of political point scoring. It's never been who I am, and I want to be the best councillor I can be for the people I represent. And in my role as Vice Chair, I want this council to be stable, focused, and able to get on with the job. We have massive changes happening right now, changes that require concentration, planning, and consistency. The last thing we need is disruption that we create ourselves. Whatever anyone thinks about individuals or parties, the reality is simple. Passing this motion creates avoidable cost, avoidable delay, and avoidable stress. And it drags attention away from the work residents actually need us to do. For those reasons, for the sake of the council's ability to function well, I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Sadie. Joe Graziano.
Thank you, Chair. In a recent news interview, it was reported that Councillor Daniel Allen had said that you were defending the democratic rights of the residents. Let me do some science. The population of North Herts is about 133,000, of which only 587 responded to. Those are the facts. We then had a council vote, and not to repeat what we've just repeated, non-binding, felt ignored despite the vigorous debating, and we encourage that. And then you and the Cabinet backed the 4 unitary authority. I'm a little offended, as some of my colleagues are, as I feel like there's an implication on the news that we are working together with some hidden agenda with the Liberal Democrats to remove you from office. I am certainly working hard in my ward, listening to the people in my community without the shenanigans of backroom dealing. I want you to know that, Dan, that this is not personal at all. I'll get on really well with you. However, most people in the LGR didn't get a chance to fill in the survey, let alone know anything about this, especially in our rural areas. People are still rattled about the 3 weekly bin collections than a poorly cascaded LGR review. The facts also show, in my science bit again, the population of Hertfordshire is about 1.2 million people and only 7,000 residents responded. That's not democracy. I certainly don't think that the people have been listened to, or as you've quoted, defended your democratic decision. There was nothing to defend. With respect to our residents, let's just pick 151 residents who preferred a 4 unitary option and go with it. There are approximately 133,000 people in North Herts. This is not democracy. Defending it is what we are here for tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Val Bryant.
Thank you, Chair. I have the dubious pleasure of having attended quite a lot of the LGR meetings since last January. And I think I need to make it clear what they're like, that the leaders from each of the Herts councils and district councils and boroughs and the county council meet with the chief execs. And they actually have they've had a really civilized set of discussions, very often meeting once a week. And the atmosphere has been so good because everyone knew that we wouldn't agree, but we had to do this the best way we could. So, for instance, the modelling was shared. It's not the modelling from the county council or from the district councils, it was shared. Things like the process was agreed on. So all the way along, we have been working together in lockstep, producing the documents that we've got. And even now, after we've had the cabinet meetings and we've agreed different things, and as has been said already, 6 councils have decided to go for 4 unitaries, for instance. It is a document from all the 11 councils that has gone to Secretary of State, which specifies the positive things for each of the 3 options. Gives all of each of the 3. The next step will be there'll be consultation again in spring, so you've got time to actually have another go at this, and then the Secretary of State will decide. So that's one set of meetings I've been to. One meeting I wasn't at is the council meeting where this was decided. I was abroad. I know some of my colleagues were on holiday or ill as well. So I watched it on TV, like residents, not many residents. And I then watched the county council meeting and the cabinet meeting. And
half a minute, Val.
And obviously took part in the cabinet meeting. At no point did anybody try to change my mind. I made up my mind on 4 unitaries because it will suit North Herts best, because it is brave, it is ambitious, it means we can do something with the future rather than just mention simplicity and money. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't really want to rerun LGR debate. Emma Fernandez, next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to rerun the LGR debate. I'm dismayed really by the motion of no confidence in our current leader. I still have trust in our leader, and I'm proud of what we've achieved so far, delivering many positive and successful outcomes for our residents here in North Herts, making it a fairer, greener place to live as promised in our manifesto. The Labour group passed a successful budget last year, which increased spending in many areas, despite the best efforts of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrat councillors, who seem to put a lot of red lines through things. However, we did pass our budget, and I'm proud of that. As champion for climate change and ecological breakdown, I was particularly proud that we managed to achieve the decarbonisation of the leisure centre projects that's currently going on across the district. This puts the words of our climate emergency declaration, quoted at the start of every meeting, into practical, effective action, reducing our carbon footprint so we can meet our net zero targets by 2030 and safeguarding these facilities for the future. We also increased capacity with the environmental health team, appointing an environmental crimes officer to safeguard our countryside against illegal dumping and other serious infringements, another thing that makes North Herts a better place to live. The new waste contract was also successfully delivered by this administration and is a shining example to other districts who seek to improve their recycling levels. In fact, it's so groundbreaking, we're recycling things that lots of other areas can't even dream of doing yet. And it is shaping the industry and influencing wider packaging developments. So all of this has been achieved under Daniel's leadership of the council. To declare a vote of no confidence appears deeply unjust to me and personal, and is happening in order to exploit political advantage and score points because of the decision taken by Cabinet over local government reorganisation, which at the end of the day is not our decision. The final decision will be made by central government, as we all know. The Lib Dem and Conservative backing of the 2 unitary seems to be motivated yet again by a shared love of cost cutting, as I saw in the budget meeting last year, rather than delivering responsive, accountable and local services for their residents. This vote of no confidence is the kind of political gameplay that brings politicians of every hue into disrepute and leads to the common refrain from people that all politicians are the same and only interested in themselves. And we all know where this disenchantment leads. As a council, we should show that we are better than this and concentrate on working together to deliver the best outcome for our residents, whatever the final decision is on LGR. And I believe that will only be achieved by retaining our current leader, not by creating chaos and confusion.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say there's nobody else, but now all of a sudden more have sprung up. Claire Strong. Claire.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskins. I think Ruth Brand made it very clear at the beginning when she presented this motion to us, this was not about LGR. And I sat here and listened to so many people going on about it. This is actually a much more serious issue. And this is about a loss of trust in the leader. And I go back to always my go-to bedtime reading is the Constitution, of course. I'm sure it is like other members in the chamber. And of course, what we have in there is our code of conduct. And the one thing it spells out big and loud to me is respect for fellow councillors. And what we didn't see after the full council decision was made was that respect to fellow councillors for the decision that they had made. Because apparently, according to the leader and his Labour colleagues in cabinet, it was irrelevant. I was actually quite surprised to hear tonight that actually the cabinet members who then decided to go with their model, that actually their vote or their decision that went in as our submission would make no difference. In that case, why was there no respect for the decision that was actually made of this council? Because that would have shown that the councillors in this chamber had trust with their leader, respect from the leader to the decision that the council had made. A responsible leader would have respected the decision of full council, because that's what democracy is about. Putting the full council decision first and listening to what the voices from the elected councillors in this chamber had said. But no, members were not listened to, and it's perhaps not surprising that members perhaps have come to the conclusion that that loss of respect to us is the reason that we have lost confidence. It is perhaps very sad, and I'm very sad for all the good words that have been said tonight about Councillor Allen, because I too have had a good reason to get on well with him, and on, you know, when we've had issues around and about in the wards that we represent. But this is very much a fundamental issue about when you lose respect for your fellow councillors and you don't want to listen to what we have to say, then I'm afraid...
Half a minute, Claire.
Thank you. Then I'm afraid that trust is gone. And when you break trust, it's very difficult to regain it without perhaps looking around and trying to have a fresh start. So thank you. And that we do not have an alliance with the Lib Dems yet.
Not politically, anyway. Next one is Councillor Paul Ward. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last few weeks, I've become increasingly concerned about the public statements of the leader, specifically regarding LGR. I'm glad Councillor Strong just mentioned the Constitution. I'd like to remind all councillors about the role of the leader in our Constitution. It says in, being nerdy, paragraph 14.6.16.5.I, that the leader is specifically responsible for speaking up on matters of local concern and representing the views of the council to government and its agents and to others. The LGR report that was agreed at both council and cabinet clearly states in section 8.14 that there is no clear consensus on a preferred structure, while survey responses showed a slight plurality for 4 unitary councils. The 2 and 3 unitary models also received significant support. This very report, with those words in, was seconded by the leader at council on the 13th of November. But the leader has been at pains to paint a very different picture in public since. In his social media video of the 27th of November, the leader said, "You told us clearly that you prefer moving to 4 unitary councils." In my view, the leader is simply not representing the council's agreed LGR report fairly in public, and therefore I support this motion of no confidence tonight.
Thank you. I've 2 more speakers on my list, which I shall go to. Oh, no, I've now got 3. You see, it always happens, doesn't it? 4, come along now, people. And then I do want to wind it up after that. Right, I'm going to go to Amy Allen.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that cannot be taken away from Daniel Allen is the way he has led Cabinet. Because leadership is not just about the decisions you make, it's about the tone you set, the expectations you create, the culture you build. Daniel has led this council with energy and positivity, with belief. He made Cabinet a place where ideas could actually breathe, a place where you weren't afraid to try bold things because you knew he would support you, challenge you constructively, and back you if it was right for residents. Daniel never once pressured me to do what's politically easy. He supported me in doing what was right. He supported the complete overhaul of our waste contract, a huge, complicated, deeply structural piece of work that affects every single household in North Herts, you might have noticed. He brought Cabinet a sense of purpose, a sense of pride, and crucially, positivity. He celebrated the work of others. He made sure portfolio holders were empowered, not micromanaged. He made sure we moved forward as a team, not a collection of people protecting their own corners. He believed in officers. He believed in members, all of you, actually. He believed in doing the right thing even when no one was watching. And so it is impossible to sit here and treat this like a neutral procedural vote, because Daniel's leadership is not something that can be replaced simply by adding up hands across two opposition's groups, although the technical term would say otherwise. This vote is not about failure, it is not about performance, nor is it about the quality of leadership, it's political games. Because good leadership leads a cabinet through difficult restructures, good leadership supports portfolio holders through major contract overhauls, good leadership builds a culture of respect and collaboration with officers, good leadership takes responsibility when things go wrong and celebrate others when things go right. That is leadership. That is what Daniel brought. This chamber wishes tonight to remove a leader who has brought energy, positivity, conviction and integrity to this authority. That choice will define none of his legacy, but it will say a great deal about the motivations of those choosing to do it.
Thank you. I have 4 speakers, all certainly from the Labour side, but I would ask you to avoid repetition. And Nigel Mason.
Thank you, Chair. This is an unnecessary motion, one that brings little credit to this council chamber and will be viewed outside this room as petty. It's important that people understand what this is about. Firstly, this is about political revenge. 3 weeks ago, Lib Dem and Tory members came to this chamber to argue for their preferred 2-council mode for Hertfordshire under the proposed local government reorganisation. They poured scorn and vitriol on anyone who dared to propose an alternative. Amidst wailing and gnashing of teeth, we were told that no sensible councillor would possibly support the 4-council model. And here's the thing, they did. Sensible councillors and councils of all political persuasions, Tory and Lib Dem, as well as Labour, did vote for the 4-council model. 6 out of Hertfordshire's 11 councils and a majority of the district and borough councils voted for that model. So I understand there is unhappiness across the chamber, but humility, not retribution, would be the mature response. And on humility, I think a number of members should reflect on what they've said here and elsewhere on public participation. Never mock the members of public who take the trouble to engage in the political process. They are not responsible for the apathy of others. And if anybody wants to watch the video of that last debate, have a look at the back row. But this isn't just about LGR. There is something more visceral about this motion. You don't like Daniel Allen. No matter what he does or how hard he works, he doesn't match your idea of what a council leader should look or sound like. Whether it's the tattoos or the interesting haircut, or his openness about ADHD, mock that. You just don't think he deserves to be here. I hate to tell you, Daniel, but you're never going to be invited to sample the wine at the National Liberal Club, just not the right type. But Dan has worked hard and effectively as leader of this council, engaged with members, officers and the public. You may not like the outcomes on LGR, but I defy you to claim that Dan has not tried to engage with all parties through this process, as a good leader should. I'll make one further point. Over the 4 or 5 years I've been on this council, one thing I've always valued is a basic culture of decency across this chamber. There are a number of members from all parties whose attendance here is sparse, but we all work on the principle if they're not here, they must have a good reason. When 6-month extensions are requested, they're given without debate.
Seconds.
While some of us dutifully attend local forums and local surgeries, others don't, but we don't politically point score on it. I fear this motion breaks with that sense of decency and fairness, and once lost, it can be hard to recover. So I ask that this motion is withdrawn, and if not, please oppose it.
Okay, it's your time. For sake of clarity, I would just say I've never been invited for wine at the National Liberal Club either. Indeed it is. Right, Ian Albert.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. It is with sadness I'd speak, and some regret I speak tonight. I mean, we produced a 450-page document that 11 councils managed to agree on. Now, I respect a lot of the views and the ways that different councillors have taken the decision on which options to take. And this is fundamental, I think. But indeed, you know, when we look at the way those councillors have approached decision making, I mean, Liberal Democrat led Three Rivers Council met in October before the spine document had even been published and voted. Similarly, Liberal Democrat St Albans, the full council debated but never voted on the options. And indeed, their cabinet received a paper, their equivalent of their cabinet received a paper recommended 2 unitaries before even council had debated the issue. And in East Herts, the Green and Liberal Democrat colleagues there, the cabinet voted unanimously for 3 unitaries while the council have voted for 4. Now, I say these things not in criticism of those councils, but in recognition that councillors of all parties have tried to do what they felt best for their area. But it didn't lead to motions of no confidence. Well, I say all parties, but that brings me to Councillor Munson's comments. Now, I have a huge respect for Ralph, but let's be clear. He talks about not shying away and so on. Well, here he advocated for 2 unitaries. At the county council, he advocated for 1 unitary, and when he couldn't get his way there, he did shy away. He dashed out of the chamber, threatened a vote of no confidence in Steve Jarvis, still had time for a photo opportunity, and to complete his day, he was the first in the rush for sandwiches. I do find it extraordinary you say you didn't want to shy away. Now, when North Herts Cabinet met to discuss this, we took time to ask the questions we think the full council had not. We asked about localism of planning committees, staffing and redundancies. We looked about the imbalance of sizes of the 3 unitary option, housing allocations. We asked about finance. We talked very much about the concerns raised by other councillors and councillor colleagues like Councillor Ward and Councillor Brown. We took our responsibility very seriously, and it was with difficulty we came to the final view. Now, I understand that colleagues may disagree with the stance we took, but I think it's a recipe for chaos if every time a cabinet takes a decision with which you disagree, it leads to a motion of no confidence. That's why I rejected the representations of Conservatives at County Hall who wanted Labour councillors to consider supporting a motion of no confidence in Steve Jarvis. And that was just wrong, and it's wrong then and it's wrong now. And we should welcome Dan's commitment and support for the most vulnerable in our community, our residents who are homeless. I'm proud to be part of this administration. I'm proud to have him as our leader, and I urge colleagues to reject this motion tonight.
Thank you very much. Mick Debenham. Mick.
Cheers, Chair. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Abbott said. If this was such a big deal for Councillor Munson, why did he not vote for the 2 unitaries at County Council? Is he putting in a no confidence motion in himself? We've heard about democracy. Imagine how the voters in Norton Ward were feeling when they were told they've now got a Liberal Democrat councillor. They must have thought, this is odd. At the election we just had, the 2 Liberal candidates finished last and second to last, 636 votes behind the man who topped the poll, Councillor Daniel Allen. Since Daniel's been leader of this council, we've only delivered 1 budget, but what an effect that's had on my portfolio. We've assigned both more money and an extra officer to our community safety team, primarily to deal with the scourge of fly tipping in our rural communities. Since the 1st of April, we've already issued 56 sanctions, higher than our previous highest going back ever. Our high visibility patrols, working with the police, have resulted in the seizure of a vehicle that was used by known fly tippers in the district. We've had 3 successful court prosecutions, 1 for abandoning a vehicle, 2 for fly tipping, as well as 3 outstanding warrants and 1 ongoing court case. In July, North Herts became the first local authority in Hertfordshire to apply for and be granted a premises closure order under the ASB Crime and Policing Act.
Can we get this back to the debate, please?
Closing an organised crime group. This was all made possible by the increased funding granted by this Labour administration under this Labour leader. While the opposition are busy playing political games, this Labour administration is ruling this council on behalf of all residents.
Thank you very much. Dave Winstanley. Dave.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, it's a tiny bit of repetition at the beginning, but this motion really will, and the energy devoted to it will really do very little to enhance the collective reputation of local councillors and politicians at a time when that could probably do with a boost. Daniel Allen is committed and selfless. The time he gives, the personal sacrifices he makes and the focus on the residents is clear to those of us who have worked with him. It's all about the residents. The Cabinet made a decision that they believed was best for residents. They did so under pressure to predetermine them. And on those coercive tactics, residents deserve better. So the reason we're here is because those tactics failed and there's some lashing out to be done. Is it personal? Definitely. Is it petty? I think so. I have absolute trust in Daniel Allen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Vijay Publisingham. Vijay.
Thanks, Chair. I think that in my 17 months in this chamber, like Councillor Winstanley just said, I've not seen anything come close to this example of politics at its worst. Let's not dress this up. This no confidence motion is nothing more than political theatre. It looks flashy and it sounds dramatic, but with all the substance of a political souffle. The people of North Herts expect better of the elected representatives in this chamber and not this pantomime looking for attention. And let's call this out. There is no crisis of leadership or trust here. All we have is a crisis of opportunism presented by the Liberal Democrats and their Conservative friends, as we are told this evening. A few councillors seem to have confused personal irritation with public interest, and they're trying to turn their frustrations over a policy issue, a lack of support for their preference on LGR, into a crisis that simply doesn't exist anywhere outside this chamber. Now, listening to some of the debate this evening, residents would rightly be asking, what's the real accusation being levelled at the council leader? That he's made difficult decisions, he's been managing competing pressures, or that he has not buckled in the face of political threats levelled by opposition group leaders. Now, under this Labour and Cooperative leaders' stewardship, this council has maintained stability when instability has become the norm across local government. We have stayed solvent. We heard tonight the medium-term financial strategy is sound and Liberal Democrats voted in support of it. We've continued to deliver robust services, and it's been done with transparency, consistency, and with a focus on putting residents and communities first. That is not a failure of leadership. That is leadership. And if the proposers spent half as much time helping solve problems as they do trying to manufacture them, then perhaps collectively we would all be in a better place. Now, let's be honest. Residents are not demanding this drama or this upheaval. They're demanding that we get on with the serious job of improving local services and tackling the local issues that matter most to them. They want accountability, Chair, not this attempt at political vandalism disguised as principle. So I say this clearly to opposition councillors. If you want to play political games, do it outside this chamber. But if you want to undertake the role that we have the privilege of holding, then put your residents first. Put your responsibilities first. It's not too late. Vote down this motion and let's get back to the serious job of delivering for our residents across North Hertfordshire.
Thank you very much. Claire Winchester. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but I do want to respond to Councillor Mason, who is claiming that this is about Dan the man and not Dan the leader. We have not once discussed his looks, style or brain wiring. We celebrate diversity of all kinds in this council and in this society.
Yeah.
Now, my house isn't the Liberal Club, but I've been very glad to serve in one in the past and be happy to do so again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now have one speaker left, Daniel Allen, and then I'll go back to the proposer.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight's difficult. It's also a moment to look at what we've achieved together as North Herts. Over the last 18 months, we've delivered real, tangible improvements for the people we serve. We've secured one of the highest value community programmes this council has ever delivered, from long-term capital investments to targeted cost of living support. We have revitalised green spaces and given direct support for community groups who are the backbone of North Herts. For years, Churchgate was the project that would never happen. Under our leadership, it's finally become to move, not just talked about, it's happening. And for the first time in decades, residents can genuinely see a future for that site because this Labour administration had the determination to get the job done. Our heritage is finally being safeguarded. The new museum storage project, again long delayed, is now progressing, protecting our shared history for generations to come. We've done that now. And when the LGA peer review came in, Local Government Association come in and do reviews of councils for those watching. When the LGA peer review came in, they recognised what we already knew. This council is stable, capable and delivering. The positive review wasn't luck, it was the product of dedicated officers, committed councillors and a Labour administration focused on people, not point scoring. Tonight's vote may seek to remove me as leader. That's politics. But let me be absolutely clear. North Herts District Council will continue to run with strong, determined Labour leadership. The work carries on. The progress carries on. And the fight for fairness carries on. However, I will reiterate, Councillor Brown attempted to blackmail me into my vote. Why argue? It's the truth. Councillor Brown doesn't believe LGR is important. That's a quote. That's why she didn't turn up to the cabinet meeting. And Councillor Brown has also said she doesn't believe in letting her councillors know only what's important. I've always made myself available to all of you, whether you're yellow, whether you're blue. I've been there, I've answered any question you've given me, and I have never lied to any of you.
Half a minute, Dan.
I've always believed that democracy is bigger than any one person. And whether I lead from the front bench, the back bench, or from the community itself, I will continue to stand up for the people that put their trust in me. So I'm going to end with the words of Tony Benn. A reminder to all of us in this chamber and beyond. There's no final victory, and there's no final defeat. There's just the same battle fought over and over again.
Thank you very much. I was going to go straight back to Ruth, but I see I now have Tim Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It's a point of order. I think that's a scurrilous allegation of blackmail and he should withdraw it immediately. I'd like your view, Chair.
I think we would withdraw that accusation. That's a private matter. Sorry? Well, I can't. It's only my view, Councillor. It's not something that I can enforce. Daniel, did you want to?
Okay, Chair. If it makes them feel better, I'll withdraw blackmail and add coercion.
Okay. Right. That's it. I'm going to come back to Ruth Brown now to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. And there've been many good points made and some allegations which are clearly untrue made, which is disappointing. We did not take this decision lightly. A vote of no confidence is not something I would ever want to bring, but we felt we were duty bound to do so as the will of council was ignored. This is not about a personal issue. As many in the chamber have said, this is about trust in a leader and their leadership of this council. I do agree with Tamsin that there are risks to this motion. In the risk to the budget, I would not want projects to be delayed, and therefore that's why we didn't take this lightly. I also agree with Sadie that the cost and time taken over all these processes is regrettable, and I didn't want extra meetings either. I'd agree with Laura Williams about collaboration. Those that know me but know that I would collaborate and find consensus wherever I can to deliver for residents with anyone I can trust, but that has to be based on trust. And as I said in my proposing speech, trust has been broken because a private conversation was made public, amongst other things. I do agree that at the area forums, they did not, when they presented, they did not express a preference. They presented all the options, but residents didn't have a chance to express their views at those forums. Therefore, it cannot be viewed as residents expressing a particular opinion because they weren't asked. This is not personal. as many people from the opposition have said, this is about leadership. I'm also proud of the North Herts Council achievements. I'm very proud of the decarbonisation project, the waste contract and Churchgate, which, by the way, were all begun under the joint administration between the Liberal Democrats and Labour, and which I'm glad to see that Labour have continued. Labour members all across Hertfordshire voted for the 4 unitary authorities. Other parties voted differently in different places because they did what they thought was best for their residents. Daniel, I think it was Donna said that the cabinet members have no influence over the decision. So why not take the will of full council? Why not follow that will? Why risk this motion? Why risk trust being destroyed by not listening to the elected local representatives? And I must just say that the cabinet does not represent Royston or the villages. There are no cabinet members from that area. And they have voted to cut those areas off, to divide North Herts in half, and they have voted against the clear and majority will of full council. Trust has been broken. Trust is not easily restored. Please support this motion.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Clarification, my apologies, point of clarification.
Yeah.
Councillor Williams represents villages, so that's not a fair statement. There is representation within cabinet.
Munster, did you want to?
Under section 4(8)(16)(d) of the Constitution, I would like to call for a ballot vote, and I believe that I have 5 other colleagues of whom are willing to second that.
Yes, you would need to have a total of 6 members who would request a ballot vote. Can you actually press on your unit if you are supportive of a ballot vote? It's exactly that. You vote on a piece of paper and it goes into a ballot box.
Which button do we press? Speak.
In the Constitution, the vote will take place by ballot if 6 members present at the meeting demand it.
I believe, Chairman, we have 6 members who are present with this.
Can we just go around and get them all to say that?
Yes, Sam.
I believe in the Constitution,
Ballot. So I call for a recorded vote.
Can we just get your? Can you just say that again?
Yeah, I believe. No. Okay, don't worry.
No.
So, Chair, you want to confirm with
Right. So the vote by ballot, which has been proposed by Ralph Munster, is supported by, I've got Claire Strong, Joe Graziano, Martin Prescott and Stephen Patmore and David Barnard and Michael Muir. So that's the Conservative group en bloc. Okay.
Yeah.
So it will be by ballot.
So, Chair, we will now.
So, okay, the team are going to hand out ballots. Yeah. Okay, friends and colleagues, for clarification, when you have your ballot paper, you will just write yes in favour of the motion or no against the motion or abstain on the motion. And they'll go into the ballot box. It's a secret ballot, and then We will announce the result once we have it. So yes, no, or abstain on your piece of paper, please. Once we've declared a result, it's my intention to take a short break and then come back for the second motion.
Once James has been around, can we just double check everyone's going to be out?
Yeah. Can I just check that everyone has handed in their ballot paper? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Not really a result.
Okay, thank you. The vote of no confidence, the leader of the council. The votes cast are as follows. Yes, 25, no, 19, 1 abstention. So the motion is carried. Yeah. Dan Allen.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to place on record my thanks to the officers of North Herts District Council. Their professionalism is the reason this council delivers for our residents every single day. I want to especially thank our Chief Executive, Anthony Roche, for his steady leadership, wise advice and constant support. It has been a privilege to work with you and with the whole team. To residents that are watching, please be assured that North Herts District Council remains stable, capable and focused on serving you. Leadership may change, but the work of the council doesn't stop. Your services will continue, your support will continue, and the progress we've made will continue. I may no longer be leader, but I remain committed to this district, to its people, and to doing my part to help North Herts thrive, and I shall make sure that I do a full handover to whomever takes over after. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, very much for that. Consequential business of that, of course, is the election of a new leader. Now, it can be done this evening. I would personally suggest that you need to all go away and think about it and talk to each other. But if there is if somebody does want to be nominated or nominate somebody for leader, you are at liberty to do so now. Are there any nominations? No. So I would suggest that we have an adjournment for more discussions. So I will adjourn the item of electing a new leader to allow group leaders to continue discussions, and we will reconvene at a later full council meeting that is going to be scheduled for Tuesday, the 13th of January, 2026 at 7:30. So I know we normally meet on a Thursday, but this is a Tuesday, the 13th of January, 2026, and there will just be that one item on the agenda to elect a leader. We will now break. Let's do, well, let's 10 minutes. Come back at 9:30, please. Oh, thank you. Okay, half a minute, councillors, if you could take your places, please. This is our final bit of business, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready to go. The final item on this evening's agenda is the Local Government Pension Scheme and Responsible Investment motion. I'd like to ask Dave Winstanley to move it, please. Not literally, but just.
Thank you very much, Chair. This motion asks the Hertfordshire Pension Committee to take action regarding investments linked to human rights abuses which are held within the Hertfordshire County Council Local Government Pension Scheme. Helpfully, the Liberal Democrats brought a successful motion to the County Council in October. My hope is that in passing this motion, we can add our support to that call. The pension scheme is valued at £6.2 billion. Circa £10 million of that is identified as being invested in firms which are linked to international illegality, human rights abuses, and genocide. For example, there's over £10 million invested in a US weapons manufacturer whose products are alleged to have been used in civilian atrocities in Yemen and Gaza. Other examples are investments in firms currently profiting from business activity in the occupied territories, which is in violation of international law, as outlined by the UN. The pension scheme does have an environmental, social, and governance responsible investment policy. They're currently working on the environmental part, as they currently are in the process of a divestment in line with the climate emergency motion, but they evidently need a push on the other two. Human rights is actually a key point within here. There's in fact a clause in here which allows any ESG requirement, so effectively this whole document, to be sidestepped for the majority of the assets. This is simply not good enough. The pension scheme is in a very strong financial position. It's entirely funded, meaning more than able to cover the projected benefits of all members. So there's no better time to strengthen an ESG policy. We'd also like them to improve transparency. Councils should be transparent with no exemptions for questionable investments. A local government pension scheme, which is funded in large part by public money, should not benefit from atrocity, genocide, apartheid regimes, or in fact any illegality. The Pension Committee controls the mandate that the third-party investment managers act under. The Pension Committee itself says it insists that investments are ethical. This motion will hopefully prompt them to insist a little harder. I therefore submit this motion. Thank you all for your time, and thank you, Chair. And I'd like to make a very slight amendment. I propose that under point 1 for it to say for the acting leader to write formally, etc. If that's okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Dave. So the proposal that you see on your paper is just amended to instruct the acting leader of the council. A seconder, I think I have Daniel Wright Mason on that.
Yes, correct.
Daniel, down to you, mate.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I just thought I would kind of touch on some areas of concerns that members might have this motion just to help with the debate. Firstly, the idea that it's not the role of councils to tell pension funds how to invest. To that, I would say this motion doesn't instruct the pension committee on specific investment decisions. It simply asks North Herts, as a participating employer, to raise concerns, something councils routinely do. We're not dictating what to invest in. We're asking for the consistent application of the ESG principles the fund already claims to uphold across all assets and for transparency across those holdings. Having a policy is not always the same as applying it, which this motion is focusing on. Secondly, the idea that disinvestment could reduce returns and harm the pension fund. To this, I would say good ethics rarely conflicts with good financial management. Quite often, they align perfectly. This is because, firstly, in this instance, the Hertfordshire Pension Fund is fully funded, which gives it flexibility. Also, the fact that numerous studies show no long-term disadvantage from divestment from high-risk sectors. In fact, many funds outperform after disinvestment because of reduced exposure to legal, regulatory, and reputational risk. Companies entered in legal international activity are, by definition, high-risk investments. And finally, that this isn't council business, it's foreign policy. And I want to be absolutely clear, this motion is not about setting foreign policy. It is about the governance of a pension fund that our staff pay into every single month. What this motion says is simply this: public pension money should not be invested in companies engaged in activity that breaches international law. That isn't foreign policy, that isn't virtue signalling. It is basic due diligence, basic ethics, and basic financial governance. Our staff are members of this fund. Our residents contribute to it through council budgets. We not only have the right, but the responsibility to raise concerns when public money is invested in companies involved in activities that international courts and the United Nations have determined to be unlawful. We are not instructing the pension fund on diplomatic matters. We are asking it to comply with its own standards and with international law. So with that in mind, colleagues, I'd really suggest voting in favour. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I mean, the motion has been duly proposed and seconded. So do we have any debate? David Chalmers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to support this motion. I think it does the right thing. And there are examples for us to be able to follow. And as in the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, there's been a direct precedent set by other pension funds, such as the Danish Teachers Pension Fund, which have already divested from companies found to be complicit in violations of international law in the occupied Palestinian territories, and that other local government pension scheme pools, such as the Brunei Pension Partnership, have adopted detailed responsible investment policies that include specific commitments on human rights, demonstrating a clear pathway for pooled funds to manage these issues. And so I would just say that I'd like to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Vijaya Pupalasingham.
Thanks, Chair. I will be supporting this motion this evening, and I thank Councillors Winstanley and Wright Mason for bringing this forward. It is measured, timely, and important in its objectives, asking for a review of the allocation of investments in the local government pension funds. Now, during the elections last year, our residents voted for, amongst other things, a fairer North Herts. It was a reflection of the values that they believe in, and those values don't end at the borders of North Herts. And one of the things I hear quite often when speaking with my residents is that they want to be able to make changes on issues local and further afield, but they often feel as if they do not have the capacity to do so. In particular, when they see events occurring in other parts of the world that they would dearly like to change, they feel they lack those means effectively. So this motion and the request that it outlines is a means by which our residents and us as their elected representatives can have an impact on things which are invariably out of our direct control, but not out of our ability to have a say and an impact. Now, there's a growing body of analysis showing that diversified, ethically aligned investment strategies can perform competitively or better over long periods. One of the common comments of concern that we've heard alluded to in this space is that in so enacting these requests, it may somehow lead to a weakening of the pension fund, but I would emphasise that its aim is to strengthen its resilience in the long term. And at the same time, residents increasingly expect that the money that they contribute indirectly to these funds to be invested in ways that reflect modern standards of corporate responsibility. Transparency and good governance are not external pressures to be avoided, but they should be embraced. And that's why this motion seeks to, this motion seeks to do, and I will be supporting it this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Sean Nolan. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. I have the honour at the start of every Finance, Audit and Risk Committee meeting of reading a statement that reminds us all, councillors, officers and independent members, of the role we have in scrutinising the finances of this council, both within and without that committee. In that vein, and as one of the key stakeholders within this scheme, it is our responsibility, I think, to scrutinise how those funds are used. Compliance with national and international law is something we should rightfully be asking for, and I'm very pleased to support this motion as presented with the amendment. The motion is clear that it only targets investments where legal obligations are not met. I don't feel that is a big ask for the scheme to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Daniel.
I get theme music. It's like being at the wrestling. Thank you to Councillors Dave Winstanley and Daniel Wright Mason. This motion has been very carefully put together and I commend it. The motion's simple. It asks us to take responsibility for where our pension investments go. Every pound that our council invests should reflect the values that we stand for: sustainability, peace, and the long-term well-being of our residents. And right now, we cannot honestly tell people that their money isn't tied up in fossil fuels that accelerate climate crisis or in companies linked to wars or weapons. And if we can't say that with confidence, then we have a duty to renew it. This is not always about party politics. As we heard, the Lib Dems brought this motion in county. It's about moral consistency and financial prudence. Sustainable investments are increasingly the most stable and forward-looking ones. Making sure that we're not indirectly funding conflict is both an ethical obligation and a reputational necessity for this council. Let's show that North Herts leads with integrity, and let's support this motion and ask our leader, Val Bryant, to forward this through.
Acting, let's just put that right. Donna Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I will keep this short as I think the arguments for this motion have been expressed really well by others. But I do want to say that I really welcome it, and I thank Councillor Winstanley and Wright Mason for bringing forward a very considered argument. I would really like to see North Herts taking a moral and ethical lead on pushing to ensure that public funds are not invested in companies that contravene international law. I think our residents do expect us to uphold high ethical standards, and this motion really does reflect that responsibility. ESG standards are increasingly being seen as essential for sustainable investment, and more investors are demanding compliance with these principles. So I think by moving to more ethical investments, the council would be ensuring that its pension fund is aligning with current best practice and international expectations. So I will be supporting this motion, and I urge other colleagues to do the same.
Thank you, Donna. And looks like finally Ian Albert.
Just thanks, Chair. And I was at the County Council meeting where we obviously received a petition that had been signed by over 1,000 signatories around the situation in Gaza. We carried a motion about asking the Pensions Committee to review its responsible investment policy. Surprisingly, which is a review the Pensions Committee were going to do anyway, surprisingly, Reform and Conservative colleagues voted against it. And it was really pretty much carried by the chair's casting vote, who since has had to have police protection for some of the abuse and that he had got for casting his vote that way. Shameful, frankly. I think in supporting this motion, probably just to update colleagues, the discussions we had at the Pensions Committee the other day. I'm delighted to be the vice chair of that committee, working with my Liberal Democrat colleague Tim Williams, who's the chair of the committee. There is a survey going out to members of the scheme that is both sort of active members, pensioner members and deferred members, asking their views around responsible investment. And also we talked about they're making sure that it was that's a boring bit, the free text box, so actually people could express a wider view. We are moving as a pool following the government changes to the way that pension fund assets, moving from access to a new pool called Borders to Coast. Borders to Coast is a pool which is existing 11 members. There will be 7 new ones, including like Essex, Kent, Hertfordshire, and so on, and it will stretch from the northeast right down to east and west Sussex. The Borders to Coast have got a very progressive, I believe, responsible investment policy. Having said that, they have an existing responsible investment policy. So whilst we will be doing a review and we'll be transferring our assets to them, let me be absolutely clear, it will be some time before we can actually kind of seek to influence the changes that are being asked for here as part of the things that we may agree in Hertfordshire as part of our responsible
About
investment
15
policy.
seconds.
So in supporting that motion, I obviously would commend council to do that. And finally, Chair, as also just we touched on briefly, we will certainly pick up that second point about obviously reviewing North Herts Council's own investment strategy. So happy to support.
Thank you very much. Oh, Emma Rowe. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a very quick one. On consultation with the monitoring officer, I will be abstaining from this evening's vote because I believe I have a disclosure of interest in relation to a close family member who works within the defence industry.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Emma. I'll go back to Dave then. Do you want to wrap up anything, or are you quite happy to go to the vote? Oh, Paul, sorry.
Just check with Melanie in terms of this motion and whether I should, not that I wasn't planning to vote anyway, given it's not actually about our investments, it's about advice to the pension. But, because my normal around our own investment strategy, normally I'll step out of.
I think the view would be if you're unsure, then don't vote.
I just won't vote. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Dave, did you want to?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing really to clarify, just thank you for your comments. Thank you for your support. I think it's really, I think it's amazing for residents to see us debating something that's so important, and the gravity of it is huge. And it sends a great message. So just whatever the outcome, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your considered comments. I really appreciate
it. There was I thinking my voice would carry. We have the motion before us, duly proposed and seconded. It wasn't my intention to read it all out again. It's just with that amendment to say the acting leader of the council. So could I ask you please to go to the vote?
That motion's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That concludes our business. The next full council meeting is now going to be the extraordinary meeting on Tuesday, the 13th of January. I'll stress that again, Tuesday, the 13th of January at 7:30 for a one-item agenda to elect a leader. With that, I wish you all a very happy Christmas.